I think of one all-important connection today. While there were many steps along the way before microfilming was born, it was that technology that enabled the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints to capture records on film that laid the groundwork for the birth of JRI-Poland. For it was the week my wife Ruth and I spent at the Family History Library in November 1994 that led to many of the connections that brought us to this day. That week in Salt Lake City with Gary Mokotov, the publisher of Avutano, and professional genealogist Eileen Polikoff, was a research adventure, but it was the frustration of endlessly cranking microfilm readers that sparked my imagination. I should mention here that being able to share the passion for research with Ruth has meant everything to me. Without Ruth being in my corner in every way, I might have been playing golf or bridge instead of being able to make a difference every day. Marrying Ruth was the very best connection I ever made. 1 month after our trip to Salt Lake City, I wrote several genealogists with the germ of an idea for a collaborative records indexing project. Two men responded to that initial vision, JRI-Poland co-founders Michael Tobias and Steve Zedek. They had the technical expertise to turn my wild idea into reality. Those of you who have heard me speak over the years know that I cannot talk about JRI-Poland without acknowledging the critical role Michael and Steve played. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Steve. Others receiving that letter became the core group of the original JRI-Poland team. Ours is a friendship cemented by a shared vision and years of collaboration building JRI-Poland record by record. It is these friends and the many more I have come to know and cherish over the years who I want to thank today. I did not become a genealogist by accident. It wasn't an old family photograph or letter from the past, or being inspired by a grandparent recounting life in the old country. I inherited the beta thalassemia genetic trait, highly uncommon amongst Ashkenazim, and my need to warn the unsuspecting family I knew and those I had yet to find of the potential danger to their future generations is at the core of everything that happened since I started my personal journey in 1991. Finding unknown family is a goal we all understand. To do that, I needed to tap the records not microfilmed by the LDS, that is, the almost 80 years of records in the Polish State Archives and the Ostrów-Mazowiecka uh, Civil Records Office. That's why I'm deeply indebted to Sally Ann Sack for inviting Jerzy Skowronek, the Director General of the Polish State Archives, to be the keynote speaker at the 1994 conference in Jerusalem that Sally Ann was chairing. Sally Ann introduced me to Skowronek, and he extended an open-ended invitation to Poland and promised to help in any way he could. Thank you, Sally Ann. That invitation led to my October 1995 trip to Poland with Michael Richmond. I was already familiar with Michael and his in-depth knowledge of the earlier records of Ostrov in the LDS films, but working on site with the post-1863 books was eye-opening. Collaborating with Michael on our town's records was the glue that brought us together and why we have remained friends and collaborators to this day. Michael and I had connected 3 years earlier, after I had read his family finder notice in the very first issue of Landsman. Reading about his Ostrov roots led me to immediately phone Michael. Because of his work on the LDS films, Michael was able to give me my beta thalassemia roots back to the 1700s on that telephone call. Was it beschert? Miracle is a better word in this case. We knew we would need a guide and interpreter for our trip. Fortunately, 6 months earlier, when my newfound cousin Gary Woodlitz decided to visit our ancestral home, Faye Busgang recommended Chris Malchevsky to be his guide. How Faye came to know Chris is a long story, but for JRI-Poland, it was a connection, like so many, that was truly beschert. Thank you, Faye. Gary's glowing description of his time with Chris was all we needed. Chris later became the JRI Poland representative, a role he has filled with total commitment and great passion to this very day. Dziękuję bardzo, Chris. At the Polish State Archives headquarters, I renewed acquaintance with Director Skowronek and met Executive Director Andrzej Biernat for the first time. In February 1996, I returned to Poland with a printout of the Ostrov database, as the archives did not have a computer at that time. That database sparked the initial discussion about an agreement to provide access to the post-LDS records of all towns in Poland. 1 year later, our first agreement with the Polish State Archives became a reality. It is at this point I must express our deepest appreciation to Executive Director Andrzej Biernat for not only being the driving force behind the original and subsequent agreements, but a man who has been JRI Poland's greatest friend and supporter throughout his tenure. There is one message I must convey to each and every one today, or reading my words in the future. From day one, it has been clear that to be successful, JRI Poland must be a collaborative effort. No volunteer organization can survive without a commitment by many, all believing in the importance of the mission and pulling in the same direction. There may have been differences along the way, but at no time has JRI Poland leadership lost sight of our goal to serve all who trace their Jewish roots to Poland. One of our core leadership gr- one of our core leadership one pardon me, one by one our core leadership grew. In no particular order, it was initially Michael Tobias, Steve Zedek, Judy Baston, Warren Blatt, Alan Draws, Gary Palgon, and Morris Spector. In the next few years, they were followed by Sheila Sallow, Hadassah Lipsius, Barbara Krasner, Robin Magid, Mark Halpern, Howard Fink, Ronnie Leibowitz, Daniel Wagner, Madeline Okladek, Ricky Nash, Alan Greenberg, Eden Joachim, Roger Lustig, Susan Stone, Kirsten Gradell, Jeff Simbler, Fred Franco, Shelley Polaro, Judy Golan, Joe Ross, Stan Seidenberg, Stephen Falk, Sandra Greenberg, Susan Waxman, Greta Davis, Earl Wertheimer, and so many others who I'm not overlooking, but I do not have time to mention by name. Thank you all. Thank you, one and all. I want to acknowledge the volunteers who joined the JRI Poland family in our second and third decade. Far too many to rattle off at this time. Also, thanks go to our dear friends in Poland, Rabbi Shudrich, our data entry contractors, many professional guides, and the staff of the Polish State Archives. Which brings me to the JRI Poland we know today. My deepest gratitude goes to the members of the JRI Poland Board and Executive Committee, the men and women who have watched over dramatic growth in recent years, and the Next Gen website development project, and who will be continuing to lead JRI Poland into the future. In alphabetical order, they are Judy Baston, Jeff Zimbler, Bill Furstenfeld, Alan Greenberg, Mark Halpern, Brian Langer, Hadassah Lipsius, Robin Magid, Adam Monago, Gary Procrasa, Joe Ross, Michael Tobias, Jeff Wexler, and Howard Zakai. I've reserved a special thanks for Robin Magid, JRI Poland's Assistant Director and Next Gen Website Project Manager. Ensuring continuity is essential for every volunteer managed nonprofit organization, and JRI Poland has that comfort. It gives me great satisfaction knowing that our future will be in the best possible hands. When this journey started, the naysayers cautioned me about the difficulty of finding volunteers and obtaining ongoing financial support to ensure our viability. I've already thanked our dedicated volunteers. Now I want to express my heartfelt appreciation on behalf of the entire JRI Poland family for the generous support of the generous support of the research community who, with small gestures or major gifts, have recognized the importance of our work. On a personal level, I want to thank all who have made donations in my honor this past week. I've been overwhelmed by their number and their touching emails and phone calls. Thank you for joining us today, and thank you all for making this day so special for me. Shana Tova.
Thank you so much, Robin. Stanley, happy birthday.
Yes,
I
it
would
is.
say I would say bis 120, but I don't want to be cheating you. Great T-shirt. Um, you know, Jews around the world are grateful to you, but even more so, perhaps most of all here in Poland, because the story of the contemporary Jewish community here is of people who often had parents and grandparents who didn't tell them then when they're growing up they were Jewish. And so one of the ways they find out more about their family is about going to the records, is about going exactly to JR Poland. And I know that it wasn't something you thought of probably when you started, but just to know that also your work here helps our young and not so young people be able to find out something more about their family. And that is amazing. Uh, I want to be very much not like a normal rabbi and not speak for too long because there's a lot of people that want to speak today. And I'm very honored to be the first one. But two quick ideas. One is that if I had to say what's most inspiring is that Stanley, you don't know what the word no means, or you don't know what the word not possible means. And there were times where it wasn't working, it wasn't working, it wasn't working, and you made it work. And this way, that way, and if this door was closed, you went through the other door. If all the doors were closed, you went through the window. And that is something I really learned from you, and I consider you my teacher in what it means never to believe in no. It just may take a little bit longer. Or as I like to say, reality is for people who lack imagination. Uh, the Pirkei Avot, uh, the ethics of the fathers, has different qualities for different ages, and so it talks about ben shmonim legvura, 80 years old is for strength, and then beyond that ben tishim lashuach, really 90 years old is even beyond strength. And so I think I can speak of certainly myself, I think of everyone, we just bless you with continued strength, go from strength to strength. It was biz 120 to 120. And then we should add more for inflation, that uh, you've inspired not just tens of people, but hundreds and probably thousands of people through your commitment and through your ability to never understand the word no. And for that, we wish you a happy birthday and a Shana Tova.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Nice to be on with Stanley. Okay. Thank you, Robin. Stanley, It has been 25 years since I met you. Come to think of it, you were a senior citizen then, and JRI Poland was just a toddler. Well, you are still a senior citizen, but in 25 years, you have led the growth of that toddler to a mature, outstanding adult in the prime of its life. It was 1997, and I was on business in Warsaw when I visited Bialystok, my mother's birthplace. I returned home and soon saw a posting on Jewish Gen asking for volunteers to work on the Bialystok indexing project. I quickly responded to Stanley, I was hooked. In July 1998, I attended my first IAJGS conference in Los Angeles, where I met Stanley in person. 2 years later in Salt Lake City, Stanley asked me to join the board of JRI Poland. It didn't take me long to accept. In those 25 years, I learned so much from Stanley. He has been a mentor and a friend to me, as he has to hundreds and maybe thousands of Polish researchers. You know who you are. Please raise your real or virtual glass as I make a toast to Stanley. The Polish say, "Sto lat," may you live 100 years. We Jews do better. Bis 120, may you live to 120. L'chaim, Nostrovia, may you live a long life and continue to lead JRI Poland. Thank you, Stanley.
Toda.
Thank you so much. Everybody can hear me? Yeah. So before we continue, I may have gotten the instructions wrong. Is this a toast or a roast? Because there's a lot of wonderful stuff that's been taught. Like, I know some of it and I agree to an extent, but if I really had my way, I would evolve this into a toast and a roast, and then we could have a lot of fun. But maybe I won't, and I'll just hold that to family time. And Stanley, you will then owe me for not doing a full-fledged roast of you. Because as we know, the people that love Stanley so much, and I'm one of his 9 nieces and nephews, we love him for all the qualities that you know and for so many more in the family, and his caring and his goodness and his thoughtfulness and his intelligence and his leadership and all these things. But he's also Stanley to us, and there's a lot of stuff to roast. But I'm going to hold off, except to say that he was the youngest of 4 kids. He was a bit bratty, and there's a lot of good stuff to roast him with. And from what I have been told, he was quite the ladies' man before he met my wonderful Aunt Ruth. In fact, from time to time, in different places that I travel to, I'll sort of get the comment, "Oh, you're Stanley Diamond's nephew." And I'll just leave it at that. So anyway, Stan, there ends the roast part of this, but I promise I could do more. By the way, as I said earlier, 90 really isn't 90, it's 65 US. And happy birthday, Stan. You are a model for all of our family. I spoke to some of my cousins and siblings before joining today and asked them, because I am representing them, to give me a couple of things that stick out with them. And, my cousin Lauren had a wonderful story. He was on his way to Israel. And of course, if you're going to be in Israel or Poland or wherever you are in the Jewish world, and Stanley has done that for me repeatedly on my Jewish journey, but Lauren spoke to Stanley, "I need some help. I want to get connected." And Stanley connected him to a woman in Eilat who thought she had no family in the world following the war. And Stanley Diamond made sure that that was no longer the case. And this woman found some family thanks to JRI and Stanley. And my cousin Lauren remembers the story because he met with this woman in Eilat, and it really sticks with him. Stanley, to me, when I think about you, I've said a few things already, but I think about the holy work that you are doing and have done, and your organization does, to document the history of the Jewish people. And for that, I am grateful, and so many other people are grateful. And all of us in the family are in awe of the work that is done here under your leadership, and now continuing with the others. And we thank you, and we thank you for being you. We thank you for showing leadership in the family, and we thank you for all that you've done to make this world, not just for Jewish people, for everybody, just a better place. So we love you, and hugs and kisses from all of us, and happy birthday.
Thank you. Thank you, Ricky. Thank you.
Should I now get off and join?
So I will try to be specific and tell that meeting Stanley spelled a big change in my life. My work with JRI-Poland and friend with Stanley was like a new starter to many things I had done earlier. Stanley became my mentor, my friend, and I have to repeat what Michael Shudrick said. Uh, at the beginning, I had problem to accept him responding to my reports, that telling that something is hard to do, something looked impossible. Stanley kept saying, don't tell me it's impossible. Tell me what does it take to make it possible. So, the same way as Michael Shudrick described it, and Stanley did it, trying, if he was expelled from one door, I went to the other door. And also, I kept in mind what Stanley kept telling me. If you meet the people, try to think the way they think. Try to be thoughtful and try to take into your perspective whatever they think is for and whatever is against, why they don't want to bend to our expectation, to our needs. So you have to be understanding for those people. So this kind of perseverance is something that I owe gratitude to Stanley. I think I tried to take it from him and just apply it in all our dealings, that I was honored to represent JRI-Poland in Poland. So this was an honor to carry responsibilities of JRI-Poland and to represent to Stanley in the country that has the biggest number of surviving Jewish records and was the most important and the biggest in terms of the number of Jewish residents in the Pale of Settlement. And not only that it was the biggest, but now, even though we tried, and Stanley was in charge of it, he tried to inspire other descendants from Jewish communities in other countries to start similar projects as we did in Poland. So the results are, for me, hard to say, but very recently, this week, I had one visitor with whom I did some field trip and commented on research and assisted him on his research in one of the Polish archives. And later, also this week, he went to continue his research to Lithuania. And he called me and he just briefly told me, what they have in terms of availability and presentation of records from Lithuania, Jewish Lithuanian records, is far not that bleak as the Polish records, Jewish records processed by you. So say that I'm deeply indebted to Stanley, because Here I could start, and I will continue from Polish records. I will try still to get some insight in what has been left in Lithuania, but unfortunately, I have to do it much difficult way, not like it was in with Polish Jewish records. So Stanley, thank you very much. We were always impressed by your dedication and perseverance and understanding to people. I work with team of many people, and they met Stanley also on some occasions, and everyone was very much impressed and admired Stanley. And I think all of you can clearly understand that it was sheer feeling, that it was real feeling, and Stanley deserved this kind of the highest uh, appraisal in the view of every person that helped JRI Poland in the Polish country. Stanley, thank you very much for all of them and for myself as well. And let you continue this wonderful work for many years ahead of you.
Dziękuję, dziękuję.
I think this one is meaningful to Stanley. It's from Mark Berkovitz and his wife, Yasha Koach, Stan, and Ruth from Mark and Jay. I don't know her name, but you know her name. So that's one. Uh, Janice Arnold says, ever grateful to Stanley for rescuing this technophobe at the start of the pandemic, as well as many years before that he provided great stories and much positive feedback. He is truly inspirational. Okay, let's see. From Penny Rubinoff, happy birthday, Stanley. Who would have thought 60 plus years ago when we met that we would be celebrating your 90th birthday together? That's X and an O from Penny. Brian Langer, he's only 90. Let me know when it's 100 and I'll be back. A lot of happy birthdays. Alva Balter, I didn't want to miss out on wishing happiest of birthdays to Mr. JRI-Poland himself, Stanley Diamond. Brian again saying he has to wash that shirt every day because it's always true. Okay, that's enough from Brian. Marilyn Hayes, kudos to you, Stanley. I have learned so much from you and enjoy working with you at JGS Montreal. So, everybody also knows that Stanley was the founder of the JGS of Montreal. It's a great society, and a lot of it's because of Stanley. Okay, Rachel Bernstein, dear Stanley, sending you love from Yerushalayim. Rachel Heller Bernstein. Well, I got to add this from Brian. He says, "Yay, Chris." So also JRI-Poland wouldn't be JRI-Poland without Krzysztof Malczewski. Judy Golan, Stanley, you're looking younger and younger. Keep it up. So keep the comments coming.
Keep the comments
They're
coming.
good.
We're having trouble getting Sally Ann into the room. So Stanley, I'm going to ask you to tell a very short story. Okay, I'd like to hear the story about you, Ostrov Mazowiecka, and meeting the apprentice.
Well, that was a fortuitous event in my life. We were sitting in the Ostrov Mazowiecka Civil Records Office when I happened to mention to Chris that in the Ostrov Mazowiecka Yiskerbook, it referred to my family name Videlitz, Schmid, Poremba. And Chris immediately said, "We have to go to Poremba." This was at 5 o'clock at night. It was already starting to get, no, it hadn't gotten dark yet. It got dark later. And so off we went to Poremba, which is about 15 kilometers from Ostrov Mazowiecka. And the first thing we did in the center of this little village was ask, where is the current blacksmith? And we were directed to the blacksmith just a couple of meters, maybe 20 meters, 30 meters down the road. And we walked in, and by the way, for those who are interested, this is all on videotape. Michael Richmond and I videotaped that particular wonderful, wonderful experience. And we walked into his blacksmith shop. It was getting dark, but his blacksmith shop was there. He was in his early 80s. The dogs were barking. Oh my God, the dogs were barking. And you'll hear that on the tape if you watch that YouTube video. And Chris, to his using the wisdom that he's always shown, said, "Tell me about the blacksmiths in Poremba." He didn't say, "Tell me about Moishik Videlitz." We didn't even know the first name of the blacksmith because the Yisker book only said Videlitz Schmid. And the blacksmith Shemansky said, well, there was Malovany. I'd never heard that name before in my life, who was the blacksmith. Of course, later I learned that this Malovany was also my second cousin. And then Chris said, what about other blacksmiths? He said, well, then, of course, there was Moishik Videlitz. I was his apprentice. That was absolutely mind-boggling. I was talking to the apprentice of my father's first cousin. And if you look at that photograph on the JRI-Poland website, you will see a man with a bow tie, and that was Moishik Videlitz, the blacksmith. Not only did we learn about Moishik and how he baked uh, uh, matzah and delivered matzah to Warsaw every year, and that's how he became the apprentice. His brother had introduced him, and his brother had been the driver taking the matzah to Warsaw and introduced Shemansky to Moishik. Sadly, Moishik also revealed to me how my father's first cousin, Moishik Videlitz, died at the hands of the Germans. He was delivering food to the ghetto. Jews were not allowed to have a cart and a horse, so he had hired a Polish driver. And they were on the road when they were stopped by a German soldier. Now, Moshe Videlitz had been a cavalryman in the Polish army, a very, very proud man. He would even walk into shul in his uniform. And so when the German soldier told him to get down off the cart and started giving him a hard time, Moishik obviously was uh, acted as Moishik, according to what we've heard. So he got down from the cart. The German soldier said to the cart driver, "Drive on." And the next thing he heard was a bullet in Moishik's head. The driver then went to the center square of Poremba, and he told everybody that he could find, Moishik is no more. Those were the exact words that Chris translated for me that Szymanski said at that point. It was remarkable. 2 years later, we went back and visited Szymanski. And Chris said to Szymanski, "You showed us Moishek's tools when we were here the last time. Will you give us something to take away? Will you give Stanley something away to take away to remember Moishek?" He turned around, reached under the table, and pulled out a meter long set of blacksmith tongs. I was absolutely awestruck to have this tool. Chris and I went to the post office where they wrapped it. We left one end open because I wanted to take it on the plane. I wasn't going to check it. And sure enough, I had all sorts of flack when I tried to check in. The KLM agent said, "I'm sorry you can't take that on the plane." But I said, "I need to. I can't lose this. It can't be lost." And so it went all the way up to the head of the airport in Poland, in Warsaw, to get permission to carry it on the plane. And so I schlepped it back. And then several years later, I was sitting with Jerzy Halberstadt in the hotel in Warsaw. Jerzy, the founder of the Poland Museum, heard me talk about the blacksmith tongs. And he said, "Stanley, you have to give them to us. We need them for the Poland Museum." So I went back to Montreal, took them out from behind the curtains in my dining room where they had been used for show and tell for 3 years. And I drove to Ottawa and gave them to the ambassador to put in his luggage when he returned to Poland and his term was finished. Subsequently, a picture of those blacksmith tongs appeared on the front page of Gazeta Wyborcza, the leading newspaper in Poland. So that Yisker book was the start of everything. It opened up so many doors, so much information. Uh, you know, I look back at so many things that have happened in JRI Poland over the years, and it all starts with one thing. We build one by one. And I guess that's why I always say every record counts, every meeting counts, every connection counts. And God willing, you will all make wonderful discoveries like I've made over the years. Thank you for asking, Robin. I'm glad to tell that story. And by the way, I should also mention, just very briefly, that the entire story has been submitted to Poland and it's part of the Poland archives.
Stanley, thank you. That's one of my favorite stories that you tell, and it just occurred to me. I don't know that we've ever said this before, but that the tongs are one of those things that are considered a miracle outside of creation, if I've got that right. Because in order to forge things in the fire, you need the tongs, but you need to have the tongs in order to make the tongs when it comes to the original tongs. So it's considered one of those miraculous things. So I just love that that's a piece of the beginning of the miracle that's JRI Poland. We love you so much, and I hope that you always know that. And we do wish you till 200 or whatever, in Poland. Once you get to 100 lat, then you're supposed to wish somebody to 200 apparently, and so or to 120 and even more. So we love you. We want you to be with us forever. And if anybody can do it, we know you can. And the tongs were miracles. Why not Stanley? So I'm having trouble. We're having trouble getting in touch with Sally Ann. So I'm going to wrap it up, and I apologize that it didn't work out the way we planned. But we just really wish you well. We're glad to toast you. and we'll keep the celebration going. Please continue to add to the kudos board. Please feel free to make your next tzedakah move in Stanley's honor to JRI Poland. And we hope to see you at a JRI Poland event real soon. So with that, please enjoy the rest of your day. Oh, one more thing I should say, which is our friends from Down Under said they would have liked to be here, but it's like 3 o'clock in the morning for them. So they didn't want you to think they don't care. It's just not. One time doesn't fit all, and that's something we live with in this wonderful organization you started. So thank you. Be well, everybody.